Welcome to Raw Food. What's happening, Jay?
Whew, what is going on? So much going on in the world. We've got a lot to cover. It is good to see you, T.
Good to chat with you, my friend.
Mhm.
What is the latest on the West Coast?
The latest on the West Coast is fall is here, but it's still that warm-ish time. So it's whatever. We had the first ever Portola Festival last weekend. It was an insane lineup. I hope they do it again. Did it at this kind of like abandoned docks kind of thing. And the energy was very positive. It was very nice. For folks that are familiar with that area, that is where the Halloween party called Ghost Ship, this giant 2-day Halloween thing used to be. And
Really?
we had a warehouse fire in Oakland at a warehouse for artists that was also called Ghost Ship. These promotions, the Halloween party and this artistic community are very close knit. And so this like 20-year running Halloween party actually shut down because like 40 people of this artistic community died at the warehouse of the same name. So it was cool to kind of like re-sanctify, like kind of, rechristen this area that used to be this place where we had this really good time for the artistic community and bring in a new thing for the artistic community down there.
What was the lineup? Who was in the lineup?
Woo! Chemical Brothers, DJ Shadow. I went for Kind Music, but they also had everybody from Disclosure to Drama. Like the lineup was sick.
Wow.
Legitimately crazy for a 2-day thing. Yeah, Charlie XCX, Yeji, so many great artists.
Wow. How was the weather?
The weather that weekend was great.
Nice.
That weekend was great. What about you? What's happening?
What is happening? I am involved in public education against my own better judgment. As usual, the kids are amazing. The adults are lunatics. Can't get out of their own way, let alone the kids' way. The language junior high school kids use with adults is astounding to me. I can't believe the degree that they're allowed to disrespect adults. And the teachers can't say anything because if they get filmed talking crazy, they get in trouble more than the kid. It is the most bizarre experience. And make no mistake about it, it's intentional. And I stand by that. And I will stand by that. And it's been intentional since Brown versus Board. Kids want to learn. They want discipline. They want parameters. They respond well to it. They grow into it and evolve from it. They crave it. They respond positively to it. And the adults and their reactivity and their emotional reductiveness interferes with it every day. It's astounding.
Yeah, because you've had kids pop off to you in your more than 10 years of teaching experience cumulatively now. You've had kids pop off to you, but you've been able to check that shit. It's usually, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's usually you feel them out and they are testing you. And then after you make it clear that you don't play that shit, they respond positively to it. Am I in the ballpark there?
Yes, kids want the discipline. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know anything and they want the direction and they want the structure. From the structure, they can evolve into who they are meant to be. But everybody, I mean, we all had to learn how to hold a spoon once. Why would you think you don't need to teach children emotional health, thinking about self-awareness, the importance of the courses that they're taking? How does this affect the trajectory of their lives? What kind of careers do they want to go into? How much money do they need to make in order to have a decent lifestyle? I mean, we need to start. Wealthy people talk about those things with their children from birth. We're not even teaching that in schools in working class neighborhoods and cities. And I'm astounded as to how it's been allowed to continue that way for so long. But make no mistake about it, it's intentional.
Mm-hmm. All the
It's all
working class
intentional.
schools. What do you think the working class schools are teaching the kids instead?
I don't know. I can't really tell you. Very, very basic. I'm teaching a subject where the other teacher in the same grade, her students are coloring storms. We're doing natural disasters, and the theme is hurricanes. And they're drawing posters of hurricanes, and I'm teaching my students the importance of connecting science to the trajectory of their life through the language of science, which is math and science. Therefore, understanding finance is fundamental to this conversation. And I was reprimanded for doing that, actually, because I went, quote, off the curriculum, end quote.
Talk about that curriculum, because when we spoke earlier, it sounded like you were actually ahead on the curriculum. And so you wanted to fill the time with something. So you gave them some practical applicability.
Right. I didn't teach the kids about Satan. I was teaching them about college and the importance of understanding finance, especially if they're going to take out college loans. How are they going to pay for school? Are parents helping? Interest rates? They didn't know anything about that. Why the courses they're taking in high school will impact the courses that they take in college, and what courses do they make, and how can you do it, and what's the most economic, efficiently way of doing it. And I just thought that this was a natural progression of the conversation to connect the dots of what they're doing now to their future. And I was reprimanded for it. I went off curriculum. But the person who's coloring in their classroom, they're on point. And again, no judgment to that. I do think coloring is important. I just didn't think it was important at high school level.
Thank you. You're teaching ninth graders, and we got our coloring books out, really?
I can't make this up.
A ninth grade science class. We're coloring. And this is supposed to be, tell them what type of school you're at.
I'm at allegedly a gifted school.
Yeah, kids have to
it's a public school, but a gifted one.
Yeah, kids have to pass a test or whatever. There's an application process.
Yes. You have to have a certain grade point average to go to this school. Not the junior high school, which shares the school with the high school. So those kids come from the local area, and those junior high school kids are night and day to the high school kids. The high school kids are amazing. And make no mistake, I'm not even firing on 4 cylinders. I'm firing on half a cylinder. I'm in my car every day at 2:45. I'm not doing anything extra. Like I'm not doing cartwheels in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Because what you usually go balls to the wall for a ladder. You will run through a wall for these kids. I've seen you do it. I've seen you bring these kids meals because they are eating chips for dinner and they don't have breakfast, and they might get free lunch, maybe, if a bully doesn't take it from them. I've seen you, pick these kids up and take them to school and take these kids home because their mom's a crackhead and they don't know who their dad is. Like, you have gone the extra mile doesn't even do it justice for what you have done for kids in the past. You're not doing any of that extra stuff, and they're still coming after you. They're still mad because you talked about the practical applications of the science class they're taking.
I'm not even making this up.
Are the good scientists are making money. They're intellectual property. Don't you understand that schools like Stanford pull in millions of dollars every year from the intellectual property that is developed at Stanford? Don't you know that the Google algorithm isn't owned by Google? It's owned by Stanford.
No,
Google founders were developed it while they were studying for a PhD in computer science at Stanford. That is intellectual property. Stanford pulls in millions from the Google algorithm. They put out a booklet. They put out a report of all the money they get from intellectual property. Intellectual property, research and development. That is the practical application of science. What can you do with science? You can start the next Google.
Anything.
What can you do with science? You can start a $1 billion biotech company. What can you do with science? We got a movie about Oppenheimer coming out. Oppenheimer worked at Berkeley, and they were working on developing the atomic bomb. You can create and destroy. You can make a ton of money. You can help people, or you can hurt people with science. You would think maybe ninth graders who are going to be studying science the next 4 years, hey, if they want to actually be involved in this and maybe want to, if it's something that is really interesting for them, here's all the things you can do with it. Especially if this is supposed to be a gifted school where these kids are supposed to be wanting to go to college and stuff anyway. You would think parents will want their kids to learn these things, especially from a Berkeley grad.
I was reprimanded, period.
Go get the coloring books instead.
Bring your crayons, kids. See you Monday.
We should do a whole episode on your experience with teaching, and I would love to bring in some other folks that work on education reform, because your experience, having had a front row seat to all of it, going back to 2010,
unreal.
Exactly what is wrong with public education.
And it's intentional. Make no mistake about it. This is an efficient execution of inefficiency.
Mm-hmm. School to prison pipeline. And then anybody else who's not in the school to prison pipeline, they want you just smart enough to flip burgers and be an obedient citizen who doesn't question shit. And that's it. Everything else will outsource to India.
Preach. I can't disagree with a thing you've said. That's based on my experience and based on the information I've read on this industry. And this is a business like any other.
And you wonder why, and don't complain when you say, oh, immigrants are taking our jobs. Don't you understand these immigrants are coming over with PhDs? Do you understand how hard university is in schools in Kenya, in Nigeria, in schools in India? You think you had to study hard? These kids got to study like a motherfucker. In China, are you kidding me? You wonder why they're taking your jobs? Yeah, some of them will take less, but they're also actually like really, really smarter than you. Want to know why? Because we're not investing in education.
And it's intentional.
You think ninth graders are coloring at schools in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Germany, in India, in China, in Japan? You think that's what ninth graders are doing? Come on. They're doing calculus.
Thank you. Moving on to our next topic, sir.
Let's go down this lightning round, starting with Liz Cheney.
So Liz Cheney has said that if Donald Trump is the Republican candidate for the next presidential candidacy, she will not be a Republican anymore, and has pledged, if needed, she will campaign on behalf of a Democrat if it ensures that Mr. Donald Trump is not the president. What say you, Jay?
It's a step in the right direction. I agree. I understand you disagree with
who?
It's a
step in the right direction for who?
I appreciate that Liz Cheney is being principled on this issue. So I think it's a step in the right direction for her. It is disgusting to me that because she was principled and she, look at her conservative record. She actually voted with Donald Trump 95% of the time. Like, she's a bona fide card carrying conservative, However, for some reason, because she didn't kiss Trump's ass enough, the Republicans in her state or in her district decided, you're insufficiently MAGA. We are getting rid of you. And so it's shitty that she's in this current situation. I also don't think she should be lionized the way that Democrats are lionizing her, because she happens to be the one person. Her and Kissinger are the two people that actually happen to have some principles. What say you?
I concur. I won't vote for her. I appreciate her, one, as a female, two, having the integrity to stand against the party she has served diligently under her father, Dick Cheney, for years. I respect her level of commitment and her integrity to what she interprets as her country and the Constitution as she sees it. My hat will always come off to her for that. Would I support her being president of the United States? I would say the person who's supposed to be president of the United States, from my perspective, should be somebody who has an understanding of the country's view as a whole, and regardless of their personal feelings about how some of the country feels about certain issues, they're able to represent those people without a bias, regardless of their own political or religious views. I'm not sure if she's able to do that. If I see evidence that demonstrates that she can, then she would be a candidate to be considered. However, can we rule out the fact that her father, Dick Cheney, was one of the architects of the disillusion of what's happened in the Middle East and everything that came from that? I don't think that should be disregarded.
Let's be honest. The Iraq War, everything that has happened in destabilizing the Middle East ever since then, giving away no bid contracts to Halliburton, the company that this guy used to be an executive for. Are you kidding me? This guy was Lucifer.
Would you vote for her
for president? No. Maybe she was vice president, and she was matched by a center leftist, somebody who balanced her out. I do think a lot of Americans might support a joint ticket of two moderates. But here's the thing: Liz Cheney isn't actually a moderate. She, like I said, she voted with Trump 95% of the time. And she's also not just a conservative, she's an evangelical conservative, which I can't get. I prefer, if you're going to be right wing, be a libertarian, right? Instead of be, an evangelical. Evangelicals basically want a theocracy.
Right. They want a Christian version of Sharia law.
Thank you.
Women are second class. Men dominate their position. God and country are not separate things. I don't understand how those people can overlap that with what the Constitution says if what their foundation or one of the tenets of their foundation is founded in the Constitution. I'm not sure how they make sense of that.
These people are the same people who want to deify the founders and framers of the Constitution, like these people were, are above reproach and everything. Don't you realize these people made fun of Christians? Look at Thomas Jefferson's letters. Look at, James Madison's letters. Look at Adams' letters. These people all wrote in plain English. They made fun of Christians. These people were Masons and they were deists, and they thought Christianity was a joke. They wanted to codify a separation of church and state, which was the entire purpose of the First Amendment. Yes, freedom of speech. That's the first part everybody keeps talking about. Did you ever read the second part? It's right there. The second part of the First Amendment is Congress shall make no law with the respect of establishing an official religion of the state. That's a separation of church and state. Do we need to wake up Thomas Jefferson out of his grave to come back here and explain that to y'all?
We're not teaching this in schools. That's the problem.
It's not like they wrote in hieroglyphs and this is up for interpretation about what they meant. They wrote in plain English. Their letters are preserved in the Smithsonian. You can Google it.
With the pushback of history being taught in the classrooms, kids don't even know who shot Kennedy. You think they know anything about Jefferson and the founding of the nation? Next topic is sports. What say you? Where do we begin?
Sports and politics. It is very interesting. The American experience is so unique in the sense that our sports and politics mix so much because so many Black folks get into sports, and because of the African American experience, those Black folks, whether they deserve to or not, whether they should be a spokesperson or not, are forced into the spotlight to speak out on politics. We've always mixed sports and politics here. I can think of a more artful way of saying that if I write it out, but you get my drift. For the longest time, sports and politics have mixed partially because of the African-American struggle here. Herschel Walker is not Muhammad Ali, is not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, is not, Jackie Robinson, is not Jim Brown, is not any of these notable athletes that took a stand and helped advance America through the African-American struggle. Herschel Walker is the antithesis of all of that, and he is running for senator, and for some godforsaken reason, he's winning right now, according to the polls in Georgia.
Shameful. There is nothing else I have to say on that.
I will just say this last thing, and I'll shut up.
Please.
He is a blatant liar, and he has gone on and said that he graduated valedictorian of University of Georgia, where he played football and won the Heisman, and he's a legend in Georgia. The man did not graduate valedictorian of Georgia.
No, he did not.
He did not even graduate. He left and went pro.
Oh.
Some people want to say it's CTE and it's adorable or something like that, and some people say it's actually just Trump-like. You can just say whatever lie you want. I don't know.
Oh, those are my thoughts.
Disgust.
Would you like to talk about your boy Brett stealing money from the poor?
Woo! Sports and politics again. Like, Brett Favre was involved in a scandal in Mississippi, the poorest state in the union, where money from the Mississippi Welfare Fund, so that's the poorest people in the poorest state who are supposed to be getting that money.
Wow.
He was involved in, more than $10 million going to, not welfare recipients. Some of that money was going to his alma mater, Southern Mississippi University, to build a new volleyball stadium for because his daughter plays volleyball there. Get him, T.
Shameful. People have gone to jail for a lot less. His reputation has been compromised for years. This is not shocking. His background has not been put on blast the way other players, for example, Terrell Owens' background had been put on blast. We heard about Michael Vick killing dogs for years? And yet I don't know that ESPN has even covered this story in a meaningful way. He has not been arrested. My understanding is that he worked with state officials of Mississippi to allow this transaction to occur. It is my understanding, based on text messages between him and other parties involved in this, they were fully and well aware of the fact that this was illegal. They were well aware of the fact of where this money was coming from, and no one batted an eye. And I'm wondering why the outrage about anti-patriotism that was directed at Cap for kneeling isn't directed at somebody who stole from the poor, who is worth over $200 million.
Not to mention, he's a legend in Mississippi. If you wanted to raise money for this thing, you could have just went and signed some doggone memorabilia and actually done some speeches. It turns out, in addition to this, he was also like paid by the state for some speaking appearances where he never actually showed up and spoke. Okay,
that is correct.
Like, dude, he's got endorsement deals with Wrangler because he's got this image of being the rugged guy or whatever. You could have done some commercials, done some speaking engagements, signed some memorabilia, let somebody put on your Hall of Fame jacket, whatever. And you could have easily raised that money if it was really that meaningful to you. But instead, it was easier for you to go through the good old boy network. Do you think anyone will be held accountable for this?
Doubtful. Highly unlikely.
Yeah, it seems like the governor could just pardon everybody, right?
He has the network and he has the resources.
Mm-hmm.
Rich people don't go to jail.
Yeah.
Unless they rob from the rich.
Yeah. And if we think, oh, well, the Mississippi voters will hold these people accountable. Mississippi is one of those gerrymandered states out there. There's a large chunk of Mississippi that is black, but the Republicans control that state with an iron fist. There's a very small handful of Democrats in the Mississippi state legislature, and they have no power.
Shameful. Moving on. What is happening with the Boston Celtics coach? Speak to it, Jay.
Ime Udoka. First of all, we haven't gotten the full tea.
Agreed. There's way more to that story than consensual sex between two married people.
Mm-hmm. But just on the outlook, holy moly. So he's the coach of the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics went to the finals and lost to my Golden State Warriors, but they did a good job. And it seems like that team is the team of the future. It seems like they will be good for a long time coming. And this coach seems to have a lot to do with that. So he's kind of a darling in the NBA right now. And of course, he went and messed it up because that's how people do sometimes. He is engaged to Nia Long and has a kid with her. First of all, that's like Jay-Z cheating on Beyonce. Are you kidding me?
And it happened.
Yeah. And it turns out he cheated on Nia Long with another woman who is married, who works for the Boston Celtics in some other capacity.
Don't shit where you eat.
It's that simple.
I didn't say don't eat.
It's that simple. This is, to me, this is basic professionalism. I don't understand why people, men particularly, keep having to learn this lesson. There's a black billionaire right now who people don't know the name of, who shat where he ate. He used to be a very high-ranking executive at Google, and so he doesn't want to be put on the black billionaires list and the Forbes list and this and that and the third. Because he got Me Too'd and now he's out, and so he's just counting his billions. He's either very close to being a billionaire or he is a billionaire, depending on where Google's stock is at, because he worked for them for 20 years. Donald Drummond is his name. Used to be head legal counsel for like 10 years, head of corp dev. Okay. Why do men keep flubbing this particular piece? What is so hard about not getting in a relationship with people you work with, even if it's consensual?
Because intelligence and behavior have nothing to do with each other.
Thinking with the wrong head.
Mind-body separation, cognitive dissonance, whatever term you'd like to use, decisions that contradict what's important to you. And he is not going to be the first or the last man on earth to do this. I do believe there's more to the story because of the level of punishment he's received, or it's excessive punishment. It sounds like, this happens every day. So I'm not clear as to why this is such breaking news yet, which leads me to believe that there's more to this story. But on the surface, it seems like two people being unprofessional and hurting their families. Ultimately, I'm not sure why that has resulted in such a drastic and swift punishment if the investigation is still ongoing. So we'll have to revisit the story as more information comes out.
Yeah. A couple of quick hitting points on that. The woman that he had an affair with, so he's the head coach. The woman that he had an affair with, I don't know exactly where she worked, but she wasn't an intern or something like that. This was a grown woman who was married to someone else who also was a senior level executive in the organization. He was either an SVP or a VP of like finance. He was a controller, okay? Something akin to a VP of finance, CFO, something of that nature. I believe the controller was part of his title. So there's a very high up person, but not involved with the team and the players. Okay. And what I have heard is that Mr. Udoka, the head coach, got this woman pregnant. And and that's apparently just scratching the surface. We don't have all of the other things. But here's my question about the logic of the punishment, because what is the punishment? For those who don't know, he's been suspended for a whole year. We should have led with that. Sorry. Suspended for the whole year. Here's my question. You tell me if this is unfair. If it was a consensual relationship, then how is it that only one party is found to have violated the company policy? And if it was not a consensual relationship, then Mr. Udoka should be under investigation for criminal activity. Is that a fair question?
Maybe it depends on who she's married to. Does her partner have more power than this coach? I don't know who her partner is, but there is a reason for that. You could speculate and say, again, I don't know all the facts of the case. I don't even know who the person is that he allegedly had this consensual, allegedly, relationship with. My understanding is a white woman. Does that play into this at all? Also, who she married to. Does that person have more power than him? Because maybe this is just straight, scorned husband backlash. Mm-hmm. Again, all the facts are not out yet, so that remains to be seen. But based on the punishment, it leads one to think that there's more to the story.
Yeah. And people hold these positions for a long time. So this person might be as powerful as a head coach, or just might be more, better connected within the organization. Because
correct.
If I'm VP of finance for the Boston Celtics, I'm not letting go of that job. I'm going to ride that for 20 years. That's a great job to have, right?
Thank you. Right.
I do believe the caveat, or one of the ways of answering my question is, hey, well, power dynamics. Fair enough. Cool. Or, hey, you're the head coach. You're the face of, you're one of the faces of the team. You are held to a higher standard. And I understand that as well.
It also depends on the company's code of conduct policies. So if that was compromised or not followed through in some way, then according to the contract, if he signed to it, then again, he and his partner, I would think, would both be liable, but that would be contingent on what type of contracts and what kind of wording are in those contracts. If they're different wording, maybe that explains the difference in punishment. The story remains to be seen, and we'll keep continuing the conversation as more information comes out.
We will. Let's touch on Ukraine real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The war has not been going well for Mother Russia. Mr. Putin has decided we need 300,000 more troops. We're going to call them up, reservists. We're going to do a bit of a draft, etc. Now, we're going to draft people to go fight over there somewhere in a war that is actually not very popular with folks in Russia. What does that remind you of? It starts with a V, rhymes with Nam. I don't know. If you say, oh, Jay, you're reaching, cool. The draft, the places where they're calling up these troops are places that are not ethnically Slavic. These are the outskirts of Russia where Chechens live, where Muslims live. We're talking about Chechnya. We're talking about Dagestan. We're talking about places that are, yes, they are part of the Russian Federation. Yes, they do speak Russian, but they are not ethnically Slavic. They oftentimes don't feel very much included in Russia. They have been oppressed every time they try to rise up and want a little bit more autonomy, etc. And so that reminds me of the way that the United States handled the beginnings of the Vietnam War when we started the draft. The draft originally, the first years when we were doing it, they were plucking. It was just black and brown folks that they were sending to the front lines. And this is what's happening there now.
Facts.
Videos are surfacing, and I'll shut up after this. Videos are surfacing, showing people arguing with the local person who's been sent there to recruit people and telling them, hey, the recruiter saying we have to go here because we have to fight for the future. And the people in Dagestan are saying, I have no future now. I have no present. Why do I need to go fight the Ukrainians? Videos are surfacing of people literally fleeing to Finland or anywhere else that will have them so that they don't get drafted into this war. What say you?
There's a big difference between being told to fight for your country, either as a job or because you're forced to, and a big difference between the intention of people fighting for their lives. So you can't underestimate a small number of people who are fighting for their lives over a large group of people who are being forced to fight. The motivation is different. I think it needs to be brought into question. Why are we sending so much funding to the Ukraine? There are other countries closer to home that we seem a lot less interested in getting involved with. So I think the question should be asked, why are we so concerned about the Ukraine? And not because of Putin's disposition so much as we have other countries closer to home that have rulers that could be considered equally as dangerous, and we don't seem nearly as invested. Iran's going through turmoil right now because of the death of a female who was arrested by the morality police because her hijab, her hair covering was on crooked, and she was taken to jail and died there because she was beaten to death. For all the liberation we speak of, where's the liberation movement here speaking to that in a way that's meaningful?
Mm-hmm. And let's say her name too. Her name was Mahsa Amini. Looks like 19 people have been killed so far in the national protests, including 4 elite guard members in an attack. No, now I'm seeing that there's total protesters killed 102, and there's been 920 non-fatal injuries, approximately 2,500 protesters, but I'd imagine that figure could be a lot larger.
It's shameful. There hasn't been an uprising like this since the Iranian Revolution. This speaks volumes that women are in the street cutting their hair and removing their head covering. I mean, these women are genuinely risking their lives. It's important to stand in solidarity with them, not as women, but as human beings. Again, we don't all have to agree with each other and we don't all have to like each other, but we all should be allowed to live our lives without terror, period. Yeah. And it's shameful. And I'm disappointed in where the United States focuses and where it's not. And it needs to be called into question. Why is there such a difference in our reaction to where war takes place in the world? And what should be our role in it at this point? I mean, we gave American citizens $1,200 when the country was shut down, but we've sent billions of dollars to the Ukraine. And I think that needs to be questioned.
I think it's definitely just to question it. I think people don't want to hear the answer, though. I believe the answer is partially legitimate. We don't want Russia or anyone believing they can just annex parts of other countries like that. We haven't had people just doing that all willy-nilly since World War II. The world overall, global stability overall, is better when countries don't forcibly annex other parts of other countries. Okay. But there's also a piece from a realpolitik school of thought that says the longer this drags out, the more we can drain Russia's resources, which overall puts the West in a more strengthened position when it comes to negotiations over gas, when it comes to everything. Russia sends basically all of Central Europe gets their gas from Russia, and a lot of Western Europe does as well.
You don't think Putin has planned for all of that?
That's the part that bothers me.
He's not a lunatic. And any media that reports that he is either uninformed or mischaracterizing him or underestimating him. That man is no idiot. He is not emotionally reactive. He is extremely pragmatic. He is a visionary. Whether or not you agree with that vision is a separate subject. So he shouldn't be disregarded as a madman. And I think to do so is to our own disadvantage. But the United States does have a vested interest in the success of the Ukraine, and it's not just bringing democracy there. I mean, they lean more towards Russian culture than they do Western culture there. And a couple of years ago, they were involved in some questionable transactions where our own government was publicly saying that they were a compromised government and they were a compromised country. So it's a little bit interesting how much the marketing has shifted in a matter of years with regard to that war. Now, I don't wish war on anybody. It's shameful in this day and age, but that doesn't make Zelensky and the leaders of that institution saints either.
Hold on. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. That was back when there was a different president who was put in power by Putin. The Ukrainian revolution that happened in 2014 was a result of people wanting to get that guy out of power, partially. That guy actually fled. I think his name was Viktor Yanukovych. he fled back to Russia, and he's been in Putin's care ever since. That was the person that the United States said had highly compromised the Ukrainian government, and that we believed was highly corrupt. He was
right, but no one man runs the ship alone. I mean, there are relationships. That's why so many people around Putin have died recently, because it takes a network of aristocrats to keep the plan going. No one man can keep it going. So they may have taken out the man, but the plan is still in motion.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's part of why after the 2014 revolution, Russia came in, they annexed Crimea, and they've been trying to annex the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk ever since. So when you said they lean more towards Russia, here's the thing. There's a split. The eastern part of Ukraine speaks Russian and would like to be part of Russia. The people in Crimea want to be part of Russia more or less, or at least that's what they say. There was an election in very heavy air quotes about that, but they do speak Russian there. Donetsk and Luhansk is disputed. Some people want to be Russian and lean towards that, but other people seems like would rather be Ukrainian. The rest of Ukraine, the western part of Ukraine, part of what kicked off that 2014 revolution was a voter referendum that said, hey, we want to move towards being part of the European Union. They want to be part of Europe, not Russia. At least that part. And that seems to be
fair.
I don't know if it's the larger part or the more populous part, but that part is
right. It's
where the Ukrainian government wants to move, as it has been interpreted by the votes of the people. So maybe a partition is the best thing to do. Let the Russian-speaking Ukrainians join Russia.
All of this is so ongoing, so we'll have to keep the conversation going as well. Thanks for joining us at Raw Food. Till next time, no artificial flavoring or preservatives.